So it would seem that after some of my previous videos, in fact, I need to redeem myself a little. I get you. Not everybody was overly impressed with the proper 12. Fussy lot. And if I'm going to redeem myself, then I'm going to do it with the all-time best-selling Irish whiskey of all time. Let's drink some whiskey. Welcome to Whisky and Whisky. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian here in Christy's bar, Kilkenny. I hope you're keeping awesome. So yeah, the best-selling Irish whiskey of all time can be gotten almost in any bar you go into or any off-license / liquor store. It's in over 130 countries. It's versatile, it's cheap, it's easily identifiable. It's pretty much saved the Irish whiskey landscape of old, paved the way for the new, has a great backstory, and to be honest, isn't all that bad to drink. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. This is Jameson Triple Distilled Irish Whiskey, or just Jameson Original, or just Jameson Irish Whiskey. This whiskey is produced by Irish distillers in Middleton Distillery in County Cork. That is the same distillery, of course, that produced the likes of Powers, Redbreast, Method and Madness, Middleton Very Rare. Method and Madness is distillery within a distillery. You have Green Spot, and it is a blend of grain and single pot still whiskeys. Wasn't always a blend, but we'll get to that in a minute in the backstory there. 40% ABV and generally priced anywhere in the Rip-Off Republic for 25 to 35 euro, because in the States it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Brief spot of history incoming. Now, John Jameson himself, who was actually a Scotsman, came over to Ireland in the late 1770s and opened a distillery in Bow Street in Dublin in 1780. Now, for a very long time, Jameson didn't actually bottle their own whiskey. They merely distilled it and aged it and then sold it to whiskey merchants and in-houses, bars, bottlers, you get the idea. Jameson did have a bottling operation for a long time in London, which mainly served the export market. But it wasn't actually until 1963 that Jameson Distillery Bow Street actually started bottling their own whiskey. 1963. And the first whiskey they bottled was called Jameson 10, which became Crested 10. Which is just now Jameson Crested, I believe, I think. In 1804, John Jameson's son, also John Jameson, took over the throne at Bow Street, Dublin, and stayed there for the next 41 years, producing what would become their world-famous whiskey. By 1870, the Bow Street Distillery was considered a city within a city. It was big, it employed hundreds of workers, blacksmiths, carpenters, there's even some goddamn stonemasons on site. There would be a Jameson descendant at the helm of the company for over 200 years. Impressive. Now, I have gone in and spoken about this many times in previous videos about the decimation of the Irish whiskey industry in around the early 1900s, and Jameson didn't get away scot-free either. They were nearly wiped out with thanks to World War, Prohibition, Irish Anglo trade wars with Britain, and of course, our own fight for independence and freedom from the Brits. So it was really quite a turbulent time in the Irish whiskey category. Maybe I'll do a full video on the history of it, just how shitty things got. Idea. What would once be the world leader and regarded as the best whiskey you could get, Irish whiskey, fell a long way from its perch, and there was literally only a handful of distilleries left operational after the 1930s and 40s. One of them, obviously, Jameson. When you think back at the turn of the 19th century, Jameson was the second largest producing distillery in Ireland that produced 1 million gallons annually. At that time, Jameson continued to distill pot still Irish whiskey and didn't want to embrace new technology like the coffee still, or as we call it, the column still. Ironically enough, one of the things that nearly destroyed the Irish whiskey market entirely eventually ended up saving it. Of course, I'm talking about, again, the coffee still, column still. Jameson eventually became a blended whiskey at what time, I'm not entirely sure. Now, finally, to sum up, in 1966, John Jameson merged with Cork Distillers and John Powers to form the Irish Distillers Group. The 5th of June 1970 saw the last distillation of pot still Irish whiskey in the Bow Street Distillery. In 1976, The Jameson distillery in Bow Street was closed following the opening of a new Middleton distillery by Irish distillers outside Cork, where it is still produced to this day. The old Bow Street distillery has undergone major renovations since and is now a very well-run visitor center, and actually won the world's leading distillery tour in 2018. So if you're ever up that way in Dublin, it is an absolutely fantastic tour and I highly recommend you check it out. I've done it myself, it's brilliant. Now, to give you in terms of popularity, just how popular Jameson is, in 2019 it surpassed 8 million cases of whiskey sold, which of course was a new record for the company. And I mentioned that in the 19th century, Bow Street was producing 1 million litres of pot still whiskey a year. Well, the new Middleton distillery has the capacity to produce up to 64 million litres a year and has 375,000 litre pot stills in operation, which are the largest in the world currently. Now, back to the whiskey. Through my research, I found that this is roughly a 70% grain to 30% pot still blend. Might be a small bit of variation on that. It's just over 3 years old threshold apparently, just over the 3-year-old threshold apparently. It is an on-age statement whiskey. This is chill filtered. This apparently does have some coloring in it, which of course is allowed by the Irish Whiskey Technical File. 40% ABV, a standard pour, as Irish as it gets. Before we drink it, fresh bottle, love it. Before we drink this tipple, like and subscribe if you haven't already, share with your family and friends, and come with me on my journey through some amazing Irish whiskies from an amateur's perspective. What am I talking about? New videos every week. Don't miss out, subscribe. And we pour in our new fancy glasses. I have, of course, given this a moment to breathe a little bit, come to, as I like to say, room temperature, which is a stupid way of saying let it breathe a little bit, but I like it. So Jameson Original on the nose, of course, a little bit of honey, a little bit of caramel, very slight bit of caramel, more honey than caramel. It's light, it comes across the nose a little bit on thin, but then on the background, you're kind of getting a little bit of those pot still kind of spices coming through. Of course, you're going to get a touch of oiliness, but overall, the general perspective is this is quite light, quite thin. A little bit of sweetness there, kind of honeyed sweetness, turning a touch of lemony citrus sweetness. The grain is definitely coming through and that's quite apparent, obviously. In terms of a blended Irish whiskey, right? Done correctly, yes? So there's nothing that stands out as aggressive. There's a little hint of the alcoholness there. Of course, you're gonna have that 40% ABV. Like I said, a very young blend. Yeah, a slight little bit of bitterness on the after end or the back end. But as Irish as it bloody gets. Let's have a little sup. Sláinte. Okay. Quite nice in terms of this, the honeyed sweetness follows through on the palate impressively. Coat of the palate quite nice, not as thin as the nose would suggest on the palate. If you're looking for a kind of beginner blended whiskey, smashing. Little bit of alcohol burn, more than the nose would suggest on the palate. Finish is long and lingering a little bit. Quite simple. This is not an overly complex whiskey. You could see why it is so popular. In my opinion, quite easy to drink. I don't drink enough of this. I have my reasons for that. Another little sip, Sláinte. So, touch of medicinal kind of note to it, which could be my palate this morning. Might be a little off, but you're definitely getting that the grain notes coming through, the spice from the pot still. Not overly thick, thin, but not wicked thin, not the thinnest thing I've ever had. Finish medium, not overly complex. The sweetness mixed with the spice is on the finish. Look, I mean, like I said, undeniably Irish. Nothing stands out as bad, pleasant for a cheap drinker, you know, but I'll give you my thoughts in a second. I'm gonna finish this off in the meantime. See you in a second. So there you have it, a very simple pour, very versatile, can be used in cocktails or mixers. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of it neat. It's not bad. It's not a badly priced whiskey. In my honest opinion, there are better whiskeys out there in or around this price point. If I'm having this whiskey, I'm generally having it in a Jameson and ginger ale with a slice of lime. That's my go-to with this. Beautiful. Now, some people arguably really do love this whiskey though. If you're a big fan of it, let me know in the comment section below what you think of it. Also, the Irish whiskey industry as a whole owes a tremendous amount of respect to this brand. If it wasn't for Jameson Irish whiskey and a handful of others, God only knows what the market would look like. So yeah, this brand has my respect 100%. There you have it, an icon, a classic, one for the shelf at all times. I hope you enjoyed that. I will be doing a lot more of the whiskeys that define the Irish whiskey category on this channel in coming weeks, so do make sure you are subscribed, and if you liked it, of course, don't forget, thumbs up. Many thanks to the lads at Christy's here for supplying the dram as always. And also, as always, all thoughts are my own. I'm not sponsored by anyone, but if you want to sponsor me, cool. Until the next time, keep it Irish. Chat soon. Sláinte.